Hey everyone, I gotta say, every time a new inflation number drops, it creates a little mayhem in the commercial real estate world. It's like every economist, every prognosticator, and every media personality jumps into the fray of what the new inflation reading means for interest rates and for real estate investors. And while all that's very important, I mean, a 25 or 50 or 75 basis point swing in interest rates could be very meaningful to the returns on a real estate investment. We can't lose sight of the underlying commercial real estate drivers. Let's take a minute and set aside the whole inflation and interest rate conversation and just look at the other economic drivers and what they would mean for commercial real estate in a normal world where we're not reacting to micro adjustments of interest rates. I'll start with GDP. Not long ago, most economists were saying we'd be in a recession by now. Instead, the economy grew by 2.5% in 2023, and according to the blue chip economist consensus, US GDP will grow by 2.4% in 2024. If we hit that, the US economy will grow by a total of $1.1 trillion in that 2-year span. To put that in perspective, in just 2 years, the US economy will grow by more than the value of the entire economy of Switzerland. Now, let's talk about jobs. Today, there are more jobs in the US than ever before in the history of our country. There are 5.8 million more jobs than there were prior to the pandemic. And in the first quarter of 2024, the US added 829,000 jobs. Setting aside the pandemic-driven undulations of the last few years that distorted the pace of job creation, the first quarter of 2024 was the strongest first quarter of job creation since 2012, when the economy was accelerating out of the financial crisis. Then there's the unemployment rate, which is just 3.8%, an exceptionally low level, especially when you consider that the labor force participation rate of people between 25 and 54 years old has averaged 83.4% for the last year. That's the highest 12-month average participation rate for this age group since 2002. The very strong employment market, together with average wage growth above 4%, has boosted both disposable income, which is 6% higher than prior to the pandemic, and total savings. I recently watched a presentation by a noted economist who showed the total US savings, then highlighted that savings has been trending down. But in my opinion, you have to include money market funds as well. A lot of people have moved their cash from their savings account into higher interest rate paying money market accounts. On a combined basis, the total savings in these two types of accounts has been on the rise for the last 10 months. And that combination of more jobs, increased wages, higher discretionary income, and increased savings spurred retail sales to a 2.4% year-over-year inflation-adjusted gain last month. On the flip side, the media has recently been highlighting the rising credit card and auto loan delinquency rates. And yes, both have been trending up, but they're both below where they were at the beginning of 2020 prior to the pandemic. The current trend doesn't look great, but my point here is that the current delinquency levels are not outside the historic norm. In addition, debt payments as a percentage of disposable income are 9.8%, lower than they were during the entire span from 2012 through 2019. Again, they're within the historic norm. I also want to add that inflation-adjusted corporate profits were up by 2.1% on a year-over-year basis in the fourth quarter of last year, and there were nearly 5.5 million new business applications in 2023, a record level. So the business climate also appears to be quite sound. Here's the point I'm trying to make with commercial real estate investors. Once you get out of the inflation, Federal Reserve, interest rate echo chamber and look at the broader economic trends, things look pretty good. And when you integrate that into the commercial real estate space demand outlook, the prospects of the sector become even more compelling. Yes, there's still challenges with older urban office towers in major metros, and we're contending with an apartment and industrial development overhang. But the pace of construction is slowing because of elevated construction loan rates and higher materials costs, so it looks like construction will soon slow. And as that happens, and as the underlying economic drivers spur space demand, commercial real estate fundamentals should gain ground. That will form the next commercial real estate space demand wave. That's the wave investors need to catch. Commercial real estate investors need to set aside all the noise and carefully look at the forces aligning to support the next wave of growth. Then carefully consider how to position for that wave. It's all about looking forward and keeping your eyes on the horizon.